Chapter 1759, Fremon's Divergence. Alexe had taken a long time to recuperate in Huashu Kingdom at first before returning. In the battle against the pseudo-Hades gatekeeper, he was one of the frontal combatants, and was injured the most, nearly dying. Shangi and the others expressed their heartfelt gratitude to him, and when it came to distributing the spoils of war, they also gave this old brother, who spoke very little but was very down-to-earth in his work, a considerable sum of money. Shangi did not expect him to contact him out of the blue, so he picked up the communication. "Hey, long time no see, Alexe. How's the treatment for the injuries on your body going?" The bearded man raised his right hand. His arm was really thick, a whole lot thicker than Shangi's calf. "Thank you for your concern, my injuries are already much better." "Then are you looking for me for something?" Shangi asked directly. He never liked to beat around the bush. Alexe nodded. "Fremon's has encountered some trouble, and we need your help." Shangi's gaze became grave. Fremon's, one of the top 10 forces in the World Federation today, in terms of national power, although it was not as strong as Huashu Kingdom and Fremon's, the fighting force was also very strong. Moreover, the people of Fremon's had always been known as a fighting nation, with a swarthy, aggressive and self-respecting culture. If they didn't encounter a problem that was really difficult to solve, they wouldn't easily ask for help. Fremon's had helped Huashu Kingdom in the first place, so Shangi's attitude was also very friendly. "Alexe, have you also encountered an attack from an underground civilization?" On the other side of the camera, the bearded man with a somewhat wooden expression nodded. Indeed, some trouble was encountered. 7 days ago. Just less than a month had passed since the Wulwan Empire had invaded Huashu Kingdom, and in the Far East Federation region of Fremon's, a large-scale abnormality appeared underground. Some areas had inexplicably and marvelously sunk, and huge deep pits had appeared in the vast ice field area. Some of those deep pits were only a few thousand meters in diameter, and some were even hundreds of kilometers in diameter. And the depths of the pits also ranged from hundreds to thousands of meters. In fact, this kind of unusual movement was not the first time it had occurred in Fremon's. In the past half a year's time, similar conditions hadn't happened very often. Moreover, only the top brass within Fremon's knew that in the extreme cold zone of the Far East region, some weird creatures had appeared in groups, destroying many human colonies. However, due to Fremon's sparse land area, it covered an excessively large area and the population was spread out. So much so that when such a situation occurred in the Far East region, a place that didn't have too many people, it didn't cause Fremon's to pay much attention. Even if the Pantheon's senior mutants wanted to send people over to investigate, the investigation team that was sent out arrived only to find that those abnormal creatures had long since disappeared without a trace. It was only that some people had suspiciously taken hazy pictures through satellites. Those weird creatures, shortly after they appeared, went under the earth through those huge deep pits. Hearing this, Shangi let out a long breath and said with a stern gaze, "The strange movements underground have started again. It looks like the appearance of the Wulwan Empire has caused the other existences underground to start growing bolder." Shangi knew what the underground civilization was fearing. There was a powerful and mysterious rule that was restraining them from appearing on the surface. Even an existence like White Dragon had quickly left after appearing in Tianhai City for less than a minute in the first place. However, in the entire Wulwan Empire, aside from the true Hades gatekeepers, the pseudo-Hades gatekeepers had acted in more than 10 minutes. Not to mention those silver armor generals and black and white commanders, as well as the green armor warriors, who were all able to last for more than an hour of fighting. This also showed that this world's restrictions on underground civilizations were slowly being relaxed. Therefore, some foolish forces began to probe their tentacles towards the ground. "It's a serious problem. Alexe." Shangi crossed his arms and patted his chin with a grave expression. "We just experienced the battle with the Wulwan Empire, and now another underground civilization has appeared. This is really breathless. The difficulty in resisting it could be very great. Of course, we'd better pray that what you encounter is not as strong as the Wulwan Empire. There were also strengths and weaknesses among underground civilizations. Of the 4 underground civilizations that Shangi had come into contact with so far, the strongest was undoubtedly the Qinling Mountain underground civilization where White Dragon was from. The second was the Wulwan Empire. Each of these 2 kingdoms possessed a power that could destroy Huashu Kingdom. While the rest, such as the civilization where the 3 pillar gods under Neon were located, was on the weaker side. The weakest was the civilization of the Nash Kingdom underneath the southwest region, whose culture had broken off and was still stuck in the feudal dynasty era. If it was put into the present, a single kingdom of Huashu Kingdom could overthrow it. Shangi did not know how much trouble Fremons had encountered. Alexe's eyebrows wrinkled like 2 yellow caterpillars, and after pondering for a while, he said, "The thing we encountered this time is very strange. It's impossible to tell how powerful it is, but with the power of Fremons alone, it's very hard to cope with it. Therefore, we need your help. I have images of them here that were recorded during the last time they destroyed a large city in the Far East region. You can take a look at it." Shangi nodded. However, he still said to Alexe, "In any case, Fremons lent us a helping hand when we were in trouble in the first place. Chaos, and the entire Huashu Kingdom will not forget this favor. So I will definitely try my best to help you guys." A rare smile bloomed on Alexe's face. "Thank you, my friend." Shangi asked, "Have you spoken to the other regions of Huashu Kingdom?" Alexe said, "I was the first to tell you, and I will have to inform the Xinjiang region next. After all, it seems that the other regions will not be able to spare the time to provide us with assistance." Shangi smiled in his heart. This guy was really straightforward, seemingly mute, but actually had great wisdom. That's right, Huashu Kingdom was also in a state of recuperation nowadays, and the various regions had suffered heavy losses in the previous battle. Nowadays, the only ones who still have the ability to help them are Xinjiang region and Jiangnan region. As for Xinjiang City, Zongyue was killed in battle, and Hotu was an earthbound spirit who easily refused to leave Xinjiang City. After thinking about it, it was still most useful to seek his help. Alright then, wait for me to finish reading the information you gave me first, and then we'll talk about what happens afterward. Shangi said with a smile. Well, that's good. After ending the communication, Shangi received a very long image. His mind was made up, this favor had to be done. However, he had his own definition of helping others. If the other party was too powerful and beyond his ability, then he would help Alexe and his family, as well as some of the Pantheon members of Fremons, escape. Saving their lives was considered a favor, not that they had to put their lives on the line to fight. Chapter 1760, The Machine. Shangi called out all the people at home to the living room. Lu Karen's body still had some oil stains that hadn't been wiped clean. Yang Xia handed her wet paper towels for her to wipe it off, but there were still some black oil stains left on her face, making her look like a small flower cat. "Brother, calling us all over, is something big happening?" Lu Karen and the others looked at Zhang Yi with a hint of curiosity in their eyes. Normally, Zhang Yi didn't ask much about everyone's lives at home. If something very big hadn't happened, he wouldn't have called everyone together. Zhang Yi said, "Sort of, something happened on Fremon's side and they just came to me for help. Over here, there's the image data they got there, I want you all to look at it together." Zhang Yi said, directly allowing the intelligence system to project in the middle of the living room. Everyone hurriedly ran to the center of the living room and found their places on the sofa. Yang Xia and Zhou Jaime even thoughtfully poured drinks and brought up some small food items. Fatty Sue asked the whole house intelligence to close the curtains. The light and shadow of the whole room darkened, everyone stared at the projection in front of them, it felt like everyone was watching a home theater. Soon, a clear image was presented in front of everyone's eyes. This place was located in the Far East Federation region of Fremons, a city called Boutet. At the very beginning of the image was the Far East city under the icy sky. This place was close to the Arctic Circle, so the temperature was much colder than Tianhai City. It was said to be a city, but there were actually less than 20,000 permanent residents here. All the residents had to wear special cold-proof clothing on weekdays to survive, and they didn't dare to expose even an inch of their skin. It was freezing cold, and just through the image of this area, one could feel a dead silence, as if the whole land was made of ice that would not melt for 10,000 years. People were wrapped up tightly, except for some soldier and workers. Other people would rarely move in the outside world without any matter. There were very few pedestrians on the long street. But all of a sudden, a loud bang came from the distance. Rumble! Rumble! The loud noise grew louder and louder, as if it was an earthquake, or as if it was a volcano exploding, and the picture began to shake. At the same time the images in front of them began to separate, no longer a single viewpoint, but a dozen of them. These images all originated from the surveillance system in the city, and the picture was extraordinarily clear, so it also captured the area where the loud noise suddenly arose. Huge plumes of smoke rose up from the northern part of the city, the earth ruptured, and a roaring sound came from beneath the earth, causing one's ears to almost crack. The soldiers in the city shouted in panic, while raising the weapons in their hands aiming blankly ahead. They didn't know what was happening, but at this moment, the weapons in their hands were already their last resort. Shangi and the others held their breath as they all wanted to take a look at what exactly it was that made Fromans go out of his way to ask for help from the outside world. Boom! The loud sounds were continuous, and after a loud sound that seemed like a heavenly crash came, Shangi clearly saw that the earth floated up. That's right, it was an entire piece of earth. From the northern part of the city, a huge piece of ground shattered open, and large swathes of land quickly rushed up into the sky. The underground has come out, Shangi said in a deep voice. The terrified screams of the Fremons came from their ears, and a large number of residents and soldiers on the streets fled in the opposite direction, unable to stop turning back with terrified eyes as they fled, looking in the direction from which the mutation had come. Boom! A huge silver-gray, smooth and bright thing with a smooth and bright body, fiercely poked out from under the earth, then ruthlessly smashed onto the ground. Boom, boom, boom. Immediately after that, one huge silver-gray pillar after another emerged from the ground. It was as if they were the limbs and feet of spiders, poking out from underneath the ground and then propping up the ground to support the body of something. It was only until this time that Zhang Yi and the others could vaguely see the appearance of that thing through the smoke and dust. Zhang Yi straightened up his body, and surprisingly, his mouth unconsciously opened wide. Even he, who had seen a lot of things, could not remain calm at this moment. He was not the only one. Such an expression appeared on the faces of everyone in the living room. Yang Xia, who was pouring tea, didn't even notice the tea overflowing from the cup on the coffee table. Because in that image, they saw a super-huge monster, like a mechanical city crawling out from under the earth. How could there be such a thing? How was this made? Only Lu Karen, while shocked, had a light of excitement in his eyes. It was because this thing they saw was actually a mega robot that was more than 200 meters tall, surpassing any of the buildings in this city, and possessing 8 mechanical arms. No, perhaps it shouldn't be called a robot because it didn't have any humanoid posture. The form was like a spider, but its body was not a spider-like shape, but a city that was supported. With just a glance, the basic judgment was that it was the source area of the mega machine, reaching 400 or 500 meters in length and width, even more massive than the shelter. As soon as it appeared, its height overshadowed the tallest high-rise in the city. Its icy body was permeated with a terrifying sense of technology, and its huge body was filled with large parts of mechanical combinations, as precise as a spaceship. This was a kind of mechanical monster that could not be manufactured according to the current human technological means, no matter what. Its appearance caused the local Fremons to panic, and the soldiers screamed in despair, frantically pulling the triggers in their hands. All sorts of weapons were shot at the terrifying oversized machinery, but when those munitions were about to get close to the oversized machinery, they were all blocked by an invisible wall altogether. Rumble! Rumble! The earth cracked open, and an even more desperate scene appeared. This was because on top of this not-so-large piece of land, 3 mega-mechanical devices of this scale had unexpectedly emerged from the ground. Shangi took a deep breath. He was shocked at what he saw in front of him. Even if he was not too knowledgeable in the field of machinery, he understood that this level of technology, surpassing the current human society by hundreds of years, was not too much. It could even be said that if there was no technological explosion, he couldn't imagine how human beings would create such monster-level machinery. The three-dimensional image was projected in the living room, and everyone looked up at the giant machine like a tall building in the sky as if they were there. When it was attacked by the human soldiers, a huge yellow beam of light shot out from a certain location at the bottom of the machine, and then swept across the surrounding area. A fan-shaped area was swept by the yellow beam of light, like a broom sweeping through garbage, sweeping everything in the area clean. A large number of images disappeared, but through some of the remaining images, it was still possible to see those mechanical devices casually resolving all the human soldiers. The roaring sound was unceasing. They seemed to slowly move their 8 huge mechanical arms in the city, but in reality, they quickly crossed over a large area of the city, and then all the skyscrapers in the middle of the city were flattened in an instant. Chapter 1761 Mechanical Civilization. On the screen, the entire city was destroyed in an instant by the giant robots that emerged from beneath the earth. The ground cracked like an eggshell, while countless small robots burrowed out of the ground and began to wreak havoc on everything around them. Those humans wailed and fled, but their bodies were all crushed by the giant machines, instantly turning into mush. The scene came to an abrupt end here, leaving only snowflakes flying in the sky. Shangi and the others fell into silence, as the scenes they saw only appeared in sci-fi movies in the past. Shangi's body leaned against the sofa and remained silent for a long time. A mechanical civilization? The first time such a term surfaced in his mind, and he was not unfamiliar with it, having seen many science fiction movies. Only in this world belonging to the mutants, it was the first time he had to deal with an existence with a super high level of technology. Even when they fought against the Wulwan Empire, the other party's main weapon was a cold weapon, and they chose to wage war with them in the form of supernatural powers. Although Shangi and the others did not understand why a civilization of this level still chose to fight in a seemingly low-level way, there must exist some sort of reasoning behind it. The level of technology possessed by the Wulwan Empire was definitely far beyond humanity as well. Yet, they had never seen such a large-scale super-era-level robot being used on the battlefield. Robots? Shangi rubbed his brow, and for a moment, he did not know how to describe the thoughts within his heart at this moment. If it's just these things, it shouldn't be difficult to defeat Fremons. Shangi said softly. Fremons possessed one of the largest stockpiles of Reaper of Love in the world, even more than Huashu kingdoms. Moreover, their armed forces were also very strong. Even if they were to face these super-age mechanical legions, they would not be unable to cope. A single Reaper of Love could definitely overpower these existences. Or was it that their entire territory had already fallen? There were many questions in Shangi's mind. However, as if he knew that Shangi would think of these questions, after the end of the scene, the avatar of a Fremon's officer once again appeared in the middle of the camera. It was a middle-aged man with a cold face and brown hair. He said, "Currently such a situation has appeared on a large scale in all parts of Fremons. Moreover, these mechanical troops, possessing extremely powerful weaponry, those are some super-era existences. We have tried to use our armed forces to fight against them, but the effect our weapons can have on them is not great. Moreover, these mechanical forces do not stay in one area. They disappear quickly after destroying an area. Nowadays, dozens of areas have been destroyed throughout Fremons." Shangi frowned slightly. The pantheon of Fremons has a world-class force of mutants. Why don't they send out the mutants to investigate? The next words of the officer in the middle of the screen answered Shangi's doubts. In the beginning, Fremons chose to solve these problems on his own. We dispatched an Epsilon-level mutant from the Pantheon to lead a group of elite Delta-level warriors to go and deal with the matter. But, the officer's face also turned cold. The Pantheon god of abundance, Arillo, who was sent, and the 30 elite mutant warriors under him, were all killed in action within a day. Nowadays, Fremons is in the middle of a hypnosis. Relying on our strength will make it difficult to solve the problems we're facing right now, so I hope that your country can send troops to support us for the sake of the two countries' friendly relations. This image was considered to be completely over. Shangi bit his finger and frowned, not knowing what to say due to the fact that it was the first time he had seen what was happening. The crowd was also silent. They who were already accustomed to mutants being the dominant force of the times also seemed to be less comfortable with the super-age mechanical civilization. Just at this time, Fatty Sue suddenly slapped his thigh and shouted with a face full of shock, "Crap, this is too, Commander. Such a big robot, if I can get one as a hand puppet, it'll be bunker." Mecca is a man's romance, and Fatty Sue was particularly fond of it. Watching the whole program, his mind only two words flow back. But, are we going to fight robots? Uncle Yu rubbed his chin with his thick arm. Even though I've started trying to mechanize my body, it still feels strange to collide with these steels. From the beginning to the end, they did not see any carbon-based creatures in the picture. This seemed to be robot troops through and through. There wasn't much to gain from defeating them, such as the difficulty in obtaining things like the mutant origin. Not to mention that robots weren't afraid of death, and were able to be manufactured in bulk. Moreover, those robots looked like they possessed extremely powerful destructive power, and just that kind of super-large machinery alone had armed forces on them that surpassed an aircraft carrier battle group. Even though the era of the mutants had arrived, hot weapons did not mean that they were not powerful enough. Unless it was Shangi's kind, a bishop-level mutant with absolute defense, even if an ordinary white chariot with average defense went forward, it could be crushed by it. The intelligence is still not sufficient, Shangi said leisurely as he closed his eyes. After a while, he opened his eyes and looked at Yang Xinxin. "Xinxin, what do you think about this matter?" He still needed his military advisor to analyze the situation for him. Yang Xinxin spoke faintly. "Fremons is indeed in trouble, but at the moment, it doesn't seem like it's too much for them to handle. Whether it's from Alexe's tone or the destructive power of the mechanical legions in the video, Fremons hasn't fallen so quickly. Then, I should understand that they are having more headaches and facing the mechanical legion, while not wishing to expend too much power on it. So it is hoped that we can share the burden for them." She looked at Shangi with a smirk. "After all, they have just helped us before. There will always be an exchange of benefits between countries, so of course they will take the opportunity to ask us to return the favor." As for the other aspects of the words, Shangi supported his chin with both hands. "Without sufficient intelligence support, we cannot even discern what kind of new civilization is appearing in Fremons this time. It's better to be more careful and cautious." Shangi's gaze was grave. "I will communicate with Xinjiang next, and by the way, I will contact the other countries to see what kind of attitude they have." The other countries in Shangi's mouth referred to Colombia. If Fremons wanted to ask for help, then the most powerful ones were of course Huashu Kingdom and Colombia. Moreover, with Colombia's powerful intelligence network, it was impossible for it to know nothing about this matter. Chapter 1762 Cave. Inside the living room, everyone expressed their opinions. However, due to insufficient intelligence, they could only voice their guesses. Some believed that what appeared in Fremons was a powerful high-tech civilization. They had created a super-mechanical army to invade the surface world. Others thought that perhaps the newly emerged civilization itself was a silicon-based civilization, and those robots were the main body of the civilization. However, Shangi and the others did not agree with this speculation. If it was really a silicon-based civilization, then what was the point of invading the human world? Shangi decided that it was better to discuss this matter with the others. So soon after, he called Meng Yuanjun of the Xinjiang region to inquire about this matter. The video was quickly connected, and when Meng Yuanjun saw Shangi, he spoke directly. "You guys have also received Fremon's request for help, right?" Shangi nodded and then said, "I don't know anything about Fremon's situation there." "You guys in Xinjiang must have information, can you tell me about it?" Meng Yuanjun smiled faintly. "We are located in the Northern Kingdom, and we do indeed possess a bit more intelligence than you. However, regarding these sudden appearances of Fremons, we are also clueless." He shook his head and sighed. The signs that preceded the occurrence of these anomalies were small, not enough to draw our attention. For such phenomena occur from time to time in all parts of the world. Chaos, you have to realize. In this era, the entire planet is undergoing inexplicable changes, and unbelievable conditions are appearing everywhere. We are able to take care of our own kingdom, and we already need to fight to the best of our ability. In reality, we don't have that much of a mind to keep an eye on other kingdoms. There were only some mutations that moved more than others that would be of concern to them. Shangi frowned. "Does it mean that you guys don't have any intelligence at all?" Meng Yuanjun helplessly spread his hands. "The actual situation is really like that." Just as Shangi was disappointed in his heart, Meng Yuanjun's words changed. "However, while we don't know, someone else does." Shangi's eyes stared. "Who is it?" Meng Yuanjun smiled and said, "The National Protectorate Army that guards the northern borderline. They must know something." Shangi then remembered the National Protectorate Army led by Chen Xuanba. The national borders were all guarded by powerful military forces. In the southeast, there was the navy and him, Zhang Yi, while the entire northern border, the long national border with other countries, was guarded by the National Protectorate Army. Huashu Kingdom and Fremons had been on fairly good terms in the past, with close interests. However, in international relations, there were never eternal enemies or friends, only eternal and unchanging interests. Therefore, facing Fremons, which bordered Huashu Kingdom and possessed great power, one needed to be wary as well. It could even be said that the main force that the National Protectorate Army led by Chen Xuanba needed to keep an eye on in the northern realm was Fremons. Thus, they definitely had some knowledge of Fremons' movements. Zhang Yi and Chen Xuanba weren't very familiar and hadn't come into contact before. He then said to Meng Yuanjun, "Is it possible for the Xinjiang region to step in and ask the National Protectorate Army to provide us with information?" Meng Yuanjun nodded. "I will attend to this matter immediately. Until we confirm Fremon's condition, none of us should act rashly." Zhang Yi smiled. "I naturally have this in my heart." The favor owed to Fremons definitely had to be repaid, but it didn't mean that one had to support it mindlessly and put themselves in danger. So Meng Yuanjun went to find Chen Xuanba, while Zhang Yi opened his address book and found the name Newton. Newton's real name was Isaac Brundle, but Zhang Yi did not know it. The information of the top mutants in each country was top secret, and the name, again, was a part of the law of cause and effect, so it was difficult to obtain. Zhang Yi was also too lazy to inquire. Anyway, the name itself was a codename, and with a codename, he could naturally communicate as well. Before the previous battle in Tianhai City, he and Newton had exchanged contact information with each other. Crossing the ocean, Zhang Yi spoke with him for the first time. It took a while for the communication to connect, and in the center of the camera, his white and cold face appeared. Seeing Zhang Yi, Newton opened the door and said, "Chaos, have you received news from Fremons?" Still the same as in the past, he didn't like to talk much nonsense. Zhang Yi laughed and stared at him. "It looks like you guys did too." Newton said coldly, "The dissension in this world has intensified, which is related to that battle between the Wulwan Empire and us. Perhaps in the future, more and more underground civilizations will show up and clash with us." Zhang Yi frowned. "If there is no way to avoid it, we can only try our best to protect ourselves." He coughed twice. Anyway, let's not talk about this. I'm looking for you this time because I want to inquire with you. does your Columbia have any information about Fremon's dissension? Of course, you can leave it out if it's inconvenient. Shangi was just holding a try-and-see attitude. He wasn't particularly familiar with Newton, but right now, he had no other source of intelligence. Newton's response, however, was very direct as he said without the slightest hesitation, "We have some intelligence that I can share directly with you." As long as it did not affect himself as well as his country's interests, the sharing of intelligence was something Newton was happy to do. After all, an existence like Shangi now stood at the very top of the human mutant world, and anyone would want to gain his friendship. Shangi smiled, "Many thanks." Newton directly showed Shangi many pictures through three-dimensional projection. Among the pictures were one huge deep pit after another, dark as if it was going to connect to the center of the Earth. Newton said, "According to the intelligence we have so far, a large number of robot legions have appeared in Fremons, and they have appeared in more than 16 federal regions in Fremons. After each appearance, they have dug many huge pits in that area. And we have discovered that they destroy human cities only in passing. In fact, traces of them digging deep pits can be found even in unoccupied zones." Shangi's eyes flashed. "What are they looking for?" "Something buried underground." Newton said, "This is indeed a very likely guess. And we also found out that not a single carbon-based creature exists amongst these mechanical legions. Even after Fremon's forces exchanged fire with them, the wreckage obtained revealed only machine parts. In other words, this is a thoroughly mechanized force." Newton held up his glasses, an eerie glow refracting through the lenses. "So we can judge that this must be a super civilization that possesses a technological level that surpasses humans by at least a few hundred years. It would be very dangerous to go to war with them. It would even exceed the extent of that battle with the Wulwan Empire." Chapter 1763 Mecca. Shangi did not expect Newton's evaluation of that mysterious mechanical civilization to be so high. He frowned. "This isn't so much, right? You have to know that we humans hold such a great killing weapon as the Reaper of Love." Newton directly interrupted him. "Believe me, a civilization that has mastered such a high level of technology, they must have mastered the technology of nuclear energy long ago. And it must have far surpassed us." Shangi's back was a bit chilled. He thought of the strange weapons used by the pseudo-Hades gatekeepers during that battle with the Wulwan Empire. It wasn't that he hadn't thought about why the Wulwan Empire, which possessed such powerful technological weapons, hadn't directly used that kind of weapon to overpower them. But right now, everything was a mystery, and it was impossible for him to find someone from the Wulwan Empire to explain it clearly. But what is certain is that the Wulwan Empire, or the mechanical civilization that appeared in Fremons, definitely has a more powerful weapon than the Reaper of Love. Shangi's tone of speech also became heavy. "In other words, this matter is difficult to resolve?" He fell into silence. Newton, however, comforted him in turn. "You don't have to be so pessimistic. Because currently, it seems that their area of operation is still in the Fremons region. Even if they affect Washu Kingdom, they are limited to the vicinity of the Far East region. We have analyzed the points of those movements, and they are all near the Arctic Circle." Shangi sighed and rubbed his brow, saying, "But there's an accident in Fremons, and it's impossible for us to ignore it. Favor was one aspect, and more importantly, it was the loss of lips and teeth. If the super kingdoms of mankind chose to look at each other coldly when facing an invasion from a foreign race, then sooner or later, one day they would run into trouble themselves and there would be no one to help them. This was also the main reason why in that battle of the Wulwan Empire, other countries risked their own lives to come to help." Shangi looked at Newton. "What do you guys say? Do you want to send someone over?" Newton held up his glasses. "No comment on that." Shangi spread his hands. Indeed, it was difficult to make a quick decision on this kind of thing, and everyone needed to weigh the pros and cons properly before doing so. Newton's mouth was very strict. He wouldn't say a single word if he shouldn't. Shangi thanked him for the information he provided before ending the call. He was lying on the sofa in the living room, and at this point, he didn't know what to do next, so he had to wait for Meng Yuanjun to give him a message back. Yang Xinxin sat next to Zhang Yi and comforted him with a soft voice, "Brother, there is no need to worry too much about this. With your current strength at the bishop level, there aren't many existences in this world that can threaten your life." Zhang Yi took a deep breath. "More than enough?" "Not much." He sighed long and hard, "Although it's not much, but nowadays it's hard for me to hide myself and live peacefully. I really want to run to the moon, create a lunar base that no one can approach, and just live well." Yang Xinxin laughed softly, "This dream can definitely be realized," she said as she turned her head back and rushed Lu Karen, who was there chatting with Zhou Qir, Yang Xia, and the others. "Right, Lu Karen." Hearing Yang Xinxin's words, Lu Karen immediately smiled and revealed his white 8 teeth, tapping his forehead with his right hand's index and middle fingers together in a saluting gesture. "Of course. Don't worry, brother, I'll take care of all the mechanical issues." Yang Xinxin smiled playfully at Zhang Yi. Brother is a pessimist. Obviously, he already possesses a power that others can hardly reach, yet he still worries about the future every day. If people do not have far-flung worries, they will have near worries. Zhang Yi lamented. Lu Karen suddenly came behind Zhang Yi in a mysterious manner and said quietly in his ear, "Brother, don't put any pressure on yourself. Sometimes, it's also necessary to rely on us more." A bright light flashed in Zhang Yi's eyes. Yes, the reason why he was always worried was because he was used to carrying all the responsibilities on top of his shoulders. Every time he fought, he would protect everyone behind himself like an old mother hen. And as more and more people came under him, his sense of responsibility grew heavier and heavier. That guy who claimed to be selfish and too lazy to care about the deaths and lives of others, but after having a bond with the people around him, he also became tongue-tied yet. Zhang Yi turned around and pinched Lu Karen's fleshy little face. Her face was very well rua, gently pulled and stretched, as if a rubber doll. "Who do you think I am all for? If my brother doesn't properly save for a rainy day, and eliminate all crises from the outside, how can we survive peacefully until now in the midst of this crisis-ridden post-apocalyptic world?" After Lu Karen heard Zhang Yi's words, he even crossed his small hands and said with a puff of air, "Brother, you're somewhat looking down on people. Although I know you've been working hard for our stable life, but people haven't been slacking off either." As she said that, she reached out to pull Zhang Yi's hand and yanked him up from the sofa. "Brother, come over here, Karen wants to show you something good." Zhang Yi was puzzled. What good thing? Lu Karen and Yang Xinxin smiled at each other, then said to Zhang Yi, "One thing that will definitely blow your mind." Zhang Yi looked at the mysterious expression on the faces of this pair of good girlfriends and couldn't help but be suspicious. "Aya, you'll know if you follow us over to take a look." The two of them pulled Zhang Yi without saying a word, then walked towards the basement. As they walked down the stairs, Lu Karen's voice was gentle and her eyes carried a few moments of reminiscence. "Brother, do you still remember that a few years ago, we just came to the shelter not long ago? At that time, I once told you that I had a dream." Zhang Yi smiled gently. "Of course, I remember it very clearly." "A dream? What dream?" "It's been 3 years since you guys came to the shelter, I'll be damned if I can still remember it." Zhang Yi spat in his heart, but he kept a gentle smile on his face, trying to show an image of a good brother who loved his sister. Lu Karen said excitedly, "I knew that my brother wouldn't forget this matter. And I, too, have been working hard for my dream. Now, I've finally gotten it done." As Lu Karen spoke, he had brought Zhang Yi to the underground storage room. In the deepest underground, there was a huge warehouse. Rumble the thick alloy doors of the warehouse slowly unfolded, and Lu Karen pointed towards the front. "Look!" A somewhat blinding light shot out from behind the doors, shining on Zhang Yi's face. He saw the object clearly and instantly remembered what Lu Karen had said to him back then. "Brother, I hope to build the best mecca one day." Chapter 1764 Mecca 2. The thing that was displayed in front of Shangi was incomparably familiar to him. It was believed that any man's heart had once possessed an incomparable desire for this thing. A mecca. A small mecca that was about 5 meters tall, silver-gray in color, with a special luster flowing on the surface, which was chameleon material that could automatically change color according to the environment, making it easy to conceal one's whereabouts, and could be anti-radar exploration. Sword and axe general lines, all reveal the toughness and sharpness of steel. The joints are covered design, but inside has a flexible connecting structure. The chest is made of translucent material. No matter how you look at it, the cockpit should be in this position. It was one-way glass, allowing one to see everything outside through the interior. While 2 metal feathers dangled from its back, there were 4 hidden jet engines at the position of the tail vertebrae. Shangi couldn't help but move over to it, his eyes bubbling with burning light, believing that there wasn't a single man in this world who could resist its charm. He reached out and stroked the body of the mech inch by inch, while at the back of the mech, among the compartments he found a handle. Shangi jumped up and pulled it out with both hands. Only a clang. With a crunching sound, a large sword that was more than 3 meters long appeared in his hand. The familiar e-metal material and the snowy bright blade of the sword had a light that made people's bones chilled to the bone. If Shangi wasn't wearing a black special inner armor on his body, it would be difficult to lift this huge sword that weighed hundreds of pounds. A mecha wearing a sword, although it does look commander, is it necessary? Shangi asked with some curiosity. To this day, he rarely used cold weapons to fight. Lu Karen, however, said to Shangi seriously, "Brother, it depends on which is the more advanced technology for offense and defense. And based on the current situation, it's obvious that defense is easier." Shangi frowned slightly, not understanding Lu Qian's words. Lu Karen carefully explained to Shangi based on the history of the development of weapons. Weapons, broadly speaking, can be divided into 3 types: long-range, melee, and defense. The development of the 3 types of weapons is a spiral structure. Primitive people in the ancient times learned to use weapons and then used wooden sticks to fight with stones. The wooden stick was obviously more powerful than the stone, because throwing a stone through air friction consumes kinetic energy. But it held the advantage of distance of attack. So later, in order to deal with flying stones, people could use wooden planks as shields against them. Wooden boards could easily block the attack of flying stones, but if they were smashed down with wooden sticks at close range, the defense of the wooden boards would be drastically weakened. Lu Karen spread out her hands and held up her left hand, so at such a stage, a warrior wielding a wooden plank with a wooden stick would be a greater threat on the battlefield. She raised her right hand again, but at times like this, if you want to gain the distance advantage again, you have to upgrade your long-range weapons. So flying stones began to turn into bows and arrows, and ordinary wooden planks began to have difficulty resisting bows and arrows. At times like this, the number of archers can determine the initiative of the battlefield. By the same token, at this time, in order to defend against bow and arrow attacks, it is necessary to build stronger metal shields as well as use armor on the body. Lu Karen's hands folded up layer by layer. To put it simply, it's an ever-climbing relationship. In the age of hot weapons, the reason why cold weapons were eliminated was because ordinary defenses couldn't withstand the guns. However, that doesn't mean it's more powerful. If the kinetic energy of the bullet is utilized at close range, the killing power will definitely be greater. And now, to the Great Mutation era. Humans have mastered supernatural powers, a power that can surpass gunpowder. Mutants can open dimensional gates, or strengthen their bodies, as well as deploy supernatural shields, just like Brother. When thermal weapons are unable to make a qualitative breakthrough in a short period of time, they will be at a disadvantage in the middle of a mutant battle. Lu Karen looked towards the huge sword in Shangi's hand, so at times like this, when facing those mutants with strong defenses, close combat is instead the most effective way to fight. Through the mechanical principle coupled with the Yuan stone-powered source, an incredible power can be utilized. Lu Karen's face grew proud as this was the masterpiece that had poured 3 years of her heart and soul into it. Now the combat ability of such a mecha would never lose to an Epsilon-level mutant. Especially when it comes to fighting against groups, it's extremely effective. Lu Karen's little face was angst-ridden, her arms crossed, and she was very self-satisfied. Really? Shangi's eyes widened in disbelief. That's for sure. Lu Karen's eyes flashed with a touch of cunning, her hand resting on the streamlined fuselage, whispering, because on top of this, it can be loaded with a reactor comparable to a small nuclear reactor. Einstein is truly great. The introduction of the theory of relativity allows mankind to obtain extremely terrifying power through such a simple principle. That's right, Lu Karen had been able to create a small reactor. People all over the world knew the basic working principle of a nuclear reactor, but the most difficult point was the acquisition of materials, and the fine crafting. But these 2 points were not a problem at all for Lu Karen. In the hands of her, whose supernatural ability index was as high as 9,900 points, she was completely capable of altering the structure of matter, and creating incredibly complex machinery and even weapons with just her personal power. Shangi looked at the mech in front of him and suddenly let out a long sigh. The stuff is indeed good, but it doesn't seem to be particularly useful to me. He was already a bishop-level mutant, not to mention the fact that piloting a mech was difficult and whether he could learn it or not. Let's just say that in terms of practicality, he didn't really need to pilot the big guy either, it would just make his mobility difficult. Of course, because this thing wasn't meant for brother in the first place. Lu Karen said with an air of entitlement as she looked at the huge and stout mech in front of her, her face slightly red as she stroked its body. This is what Karen built for Shinshin and I. With this, in the future, we'll also be able to be your helpers when brother fights. Shangi instead scratched his head with some regret. Actually, I would like to open it. Yang Shinshin laughed softly. Brother, that would be too difficult for you. Lu Karen seriously raised a finger and reminded Shangi, this is not something easy to drive like the EVA in the cartoon. The difficulty of operating a mecha is more than 10 times more difficult than even a fighter jet. There are thousands of operating buttons and combinations alone. Other than me, the maker herself, she patted Yang Shinshin's back. Only Shinshin, the genius who can't forget, can handle it. Chapter 1765, Mecha 3. Lu Karen built a mecha that was extremely difficult to operate. Imagine a thing that could run and jump above the earth, fly above the sky, and operate as flexibly as the human body, but was fully mechanically constructed. How terrifying was it to operate? Even the movement of each joint has a special operation method to maintain the overall coordination. This was also why, in the past, there had been many people who questioned that instead of thinking about how to build a mecha, it would be better to build a simple and thick tank. Shangi rubbed his nose. I thought it was for me. Lu Karen hurriedly consoled, if brother wants to drive it, Karen can take you to experience it. Oh. There is a simple mode, and the feeling of driving it is similar to taking an airplane. Shangi rolled his eyes. Forget it, the exoskeleton armor on my body can do the same. No need for that. The exoskeleton mech was equal to a reinforced version of a combat suit that could be manipulated by the body. But such a large-scale mech obviously couldn't, and Shangi didn't have the leisure to learn it. Lu Karen smiled. Brother, don't be so lost. Just imagine, from now on, you have another super-level powerful helper by your side. Wouldn't it be great? Shangi recalled the supplies that he had given Lu Karen over the past 3 years. Although he hadn't bothered to do the math, he roughly estimated that all these resources were capable of creating an aircraft carrier battle group. There was no joke, as he had really asked the East Sea region for an aircraft carrier. The old type of aircraft carriers from the Ocean Age had long been eliminated at this point. Shangi raised his head and looked at the mech in front of him, which was about 5 meters tall, with some flesh pane. This was indeed an extraordinary research achievement. It was just a little too resource-intensive. I don't know how strong its combat power is. If it can only reach the entry white chariot level, it doesn't seem to be a big help to Shangi nowadays. Shangi glanced at Liu Karen. It's good that you like it. You know, brother has always supported you in researching new props. Liu Karen seemed to have seen Shangi's inner thoughts and exchanged a glance with Yang Xinxin as the two of them smiled mysteriously. She came over and whispered in Shangi's ear. Brother, don't feel that it's a waste of resources. It will surprise you when it comes to the battlefield. Soon after, Xinjing's side also replied to Shangi's message. Meng Yuanjun said to Shangi, I've already communicated with Xuanxu, and their side is indeed aware of the situation that has arisen in Fremons. Furthermore, they have also clashed with those mechanical legions. Shangi's gaze intensified a lot when he heard this. Have they already touched the borders of Huashu Kingdom? Meng Yuanjun said, Huashu Kingdom only has some areas in the northernmost part of the country that show signs of mechanical legion activity. Xuanxu brought people over to clean it up. Zhang Yi had listened bashfully. In his opinion, even if things spread to the borders of Huashu Kingdom, it could only be a small group of mechanical legions. However, Meng Yuanjun's next words directly made Zhang Yi nonchalant. The Northeast region sent troops over to investigate, and one of the 5 immortals of the Northeast has fallen, and God Luya has been seriously injured. The indifferent expression on Zhang Yi's face could no longer hang on. It actually affected Huashu Kingdom. He found it very unbelievable, those mechanically created contraptions were able to injure God Luya. It had been a month since the last Great War, and as a matter of fact, with all of the Northeast region's resources nurturing him, God Luya's injuries had long since healed. And having received the distribution of resources after the Great War, his strength would have been further increased. Not to mention reaching Black Chariot, he was already close. But he was actually injured by those steel lumps? Meng Yuanjun said, it's hard to say. In short, the combat power of those mechanical legions is not as simple as you think. They are so powerful that even mutants have trouble fighting them. Zhang Yi crossed his arms and nodded, I know, of course I know. Mutants or machinery or thermal weapons, in principle, they were all a means of transforming highly powerful energy into attack and defense. It's just that I didn't expect that there would be machinery that could injure an Epsilon-level mutant. Speaking of this, he thought of the mech developed by Liu Karen and couldn't help but have an odd thought. Liu Karen belonged to the humans that evolved after the end of the world, and she was able to build super-powerful weapons. Then how could an underground civilization with super technology not be able to do so? Zhang Yi's mind had to reweigh the matter of traveling to Fremons. He looked at Meng Yuanjun and asked in a deep voice, what do you say about this matter? Who will be sent forward? Meng Yuanjun fell into silence. His expression was tangled, as if he wanted to go over there but had no way to do so. After a long time, he let out a long sigh and said to Zhang Yi, I do wish to be able to send troops over. But right now, Zongyue is dead in battle, and Hotu and Xidagarba King can't be easily deployed. As you know, Hotua's body and bones aren't too good, and that last battle had a great impact on her. So, we'll probably have to give up on this rare opportunity. Zhang Yi couldn't help but roll his eyes. A rare opportunity? It's clearly a huge crisis, right? Shang Daowen, however, laughed as he stared at Zhang Yi and said meaningfully, chaos, crises always coexist with opportunities. You have to understand that this sudden appearance of an underground civilization is a rare and good opportunity for all the major powers in the world. Zhang Yi seemed to have thought of something, but he still seriously asked for advice. How do I put it? When he encountered something like this, the first thing that came to his mind was how to preserve himself. Minimizing his danger, not taking the fire out of it. But Meng Yuanjun's thought process was clearly different from his. Meng Yuanjun just said lightly, let's take an example. Last time we fought with the Wulwan Empire, Columbia and Fremons sent people to participate in the war. Did they gain much? Zhang Yi thought about it. Both kingdoms sent Epsilon-level mutants to the war. And in the end, the war was won, and they had harvested quite rich resources. These included some of the extremely precious bishop-level mutants' origins, as well as a large number of weapons and remains from the soldiers of the Wulwan Empire. Shangi came to a sudden realization. I see what you mean. Powerful underground civilizations, everything on them is a precious treasure. When fighting against them, it is certainly necessary to face great dangers. But if the war is taking place on another country's territory, then for us, that risk is actually minimized. But as long as we participate in the war, being able to obtain anything of value from the mechanical civilization will be a huge gain for us. Meng Yuanjun nodded. Clever, you've hit the nail on the head. It's like when traces of an underground civilization were found before, the countries of the world must go forward to investigate even if they know it's extremely dangerous. Believe me, after experiencing the incident in the Wulwan Empire, this time the countries of the world as well as powerful organizations will send people there. Fremons has known about the existence of those mechanical civilizations for a long time, and if they weren't really unable to solve it on their own, they wouldn't have asked us for help. Shangi blinked his eyes, pondering the pros and cons of this matter in his mind. He realized that for himself, this matter was indeed low risk and high yield. This was because as the world's #1 life preservation expert, who had now reached the bishop level, even traveling to Fremons was the lowest risk of all. When Meng Yuanjun saw Shangi's expression, he knew that Shangi was already somewhat moved. He said seriously, Chaos, this time, Huashu Kingdom must send someone forward. I've thought about it for a while, and you are the most suitable candidate. Shangi didn't rush to reply, but what Meng Yuanjun said was indeed true. Nowadays, Zhang Yi's strength was the crown of Huashu Kingdom, and his ability to preserve his life was extremely strong. With the ability of the time and space dual system, he could attack and defend. The key was that Fremons was too large, and when other people went over there, they still had to take transportation, and even if they used V-37 to catch up, it would take a few hours to travel from east to west. What about Zhang Yi? He would be there in a while. It wasn't that the people from the other regions didn't want to go, but nowadays Huashu Kingdom was in a state of disarray, and after the Great War, they were too busy to take time out of their lives. Zhang Yi rubbed his chin and said, What about the other regions? It's impossible to let me go alone. Meng Yuanjun sighed. The other regions have also received news about this matter one after another. But you know the situation today, only Xinjiang and Jiangnan region have the ability to send troops to support them. Why don't you go and discuss with Zhu Zheng? The 2 epsilons under his command were both intact in the last great battle. Moreover, that mysterious Nuba ability is very interesting, bringing her along might help you a lot. Zhang Yi snorted. It's better to forget about it. I am not short of manpower. For historical reasons, Zhang Yi did not wish to get too close to Zhu Yu. Meng Yuanjun laughed. So then, you are agreeing to travel to Fremons? Zhang Yi said indifferently, I am a person who never forgets the favors of others. Alexe came to Tianhai City to help us in the first place, so I have to respond. We can't let others say that our Huashu Kingdom is ungrateful. Meng Yuanjun nodded. Well then, we will inform Fremons of this matter through official channels. You will represent our Huashu Kingdom and head there for support. Zhang Yi ended his communication with Meng Yuanjun, repeating the previous conversation in his mind, feeling that Meng Yuanjun did have a point. In the Battle of the Wulwan Empire, Tianhai City seemed to have suffered a lot of losses, but in reality, Zhang Yi's fundamentals hadn't been shaken in any way. Instead, it allowed him to obtain a large amount of mutant origin, absorbing the origin of several Black Chariot, as well as some of the Black Bishop level's origin, allowing him to evolve to the White Bishop level in one fell swoop. Eating the marrow, he naturally couldn't miss out in the face of Fremon's alien transformation. This was evidenced by the mutants in the various regions of Huashu Kingdom. They were fixated on their own territory and experienced too few battles, so the speed of their ability leveling up was far slower than Zhang Yi's. One slow step, they were now completely left behind by Shangi, unable to look back. If he didn't go this time, and the high-level mutants from other countries did, he could potentially widen the gap with the others. Thinking about what was recorded on the lost slate, Shangi's gaze became much firmer. If this is a world where the meaning of life lies in becoming the most powerful through constant killing so that the ultimate one devours all, then I must always remain vigilant and not be able to fall behind. Shangi then gathered everyone in his entire family and announced to them his decision that he would be traveling to Fremons. The expressions of the people were not too surprised after hearing this. "Uncle, you said, Fremons has helped us, we have to return this favor as well." Yang Xinxin pointed out Shangi's thoughts with a very pithy sentence. A crisis also represents a great opportunity. At times like this, if we can't show up at the table, then it's possible that we'll show up on top of the menu later. Lu Karen was beside her, a bright light shining straight inside her excited eyes. She rubbed her fists together. The super mecca that she had spent 3 years building now finally had the chance to go to war. Shangi said to Bai Li Changqing, "How is the training of the Volt Shadow Troop going now?" Bai Li Changqing hurriedly came over and saluted Zhang Yi. "Captain, those guys are now all elite soldiers and have absolute loyalty to you. As long as you give the order, they will go through fire and water without hesitation. Then let them go with me. Only through the baptism of war can they become truly strong." The Mechanical Legion was incomparably huge, and among the images Fremons had given them, the robots that had appeared everywhere left an extremely deep impression on Zhang Yi. As the main general, he certainly wouldn't personally clean up every straggler. At times like this, it was especially important to have henchmen to help with the miscellaneous tasks as well as cleaning up the battlefield. Zhang Yi said to everyone, "For the next 3 days, prepare well. Adjust your physical condition, weapons and equipment to the best. After 3 days, set off with me to support Fremons." Everyone immediately said, "Yes." Everyone hurriedly went back to make preparations. Even Yang Xia came to the kitchen to make new supernatural food. Zhang Yi, on the other hand, was carefully checking the equipment on his body. Although there was an intelligent system that could check it on his behalf, he had gotten into the habit from 3 years ago that he would confirm every piece of equipment on his body before the big battle came. Doing so was what would completely stabilize his heart. Not long after, a video communication rang out. Zhang Yi raised his eyes and saw that it was Zhu Zheng. The corner of Zhang Yi's mouth slightly hooked up as he ordered the intelligent system to connect. "Zhang Yi, I heard that you're planning to head to Fremons?" Zhu Zheng asked smilingly. Zhang Yi said, "Yes, after all, people helped us in the first place, I have to show something too, don't I?" Zhu Zheng nodded. "That's right. Knowing how to repay favors is a traditional virtue of my Huashu kingdom. However, I heard that the Xinjiang region is not going to send anyone over this time. In terms of troop strength, you might be a bit overwhelmed. It doesn't matter, you know my ability to keep my life intact." Zhang Yi's tone remained light as he took off his divine refinement bracelet, carefully confirming that Bowser's vital signs were normal, lest this semi-biological weapon would cause trouble at that time. "It's ultimately more peaceful to have help, you're representing the face of Huashu Kingdom this time." Zhu Zheng's eyes flickered strangely.